Thanks, Cody.
Yep.
Okay, so if you are going to add or subtract using significant figures, you round the answer to the lowest number of decimal places. So if you have, for example, the number, let's say 1.34, and you are adding that to 7.1. This has two decimal places. This has 1. So the answer should have 1 decimal place because 1 is a smaller number than 2. So adding and subtracting actually has nothing to do with significant figures at all. Not really. So if I was to actually add this, well, I can do that in my head. It would be 8.44, but because this is 1 decimal place, I would round this to just 8.4. If I subtracted, I would do the same thing. I would round it to 1 decimal place. If I was to multiply these numbers, 1.34 times 7.1, 1.34 times 7.1, I would get 9.514, but this time we look at the number of sig figs. This has 3, this has 2, so this must have 2. I would get rid of those, it would be 9.5.
Your example.
Why?
This. Because
Oh, well that's not my example to be fair, but it's the worksheet's example.
it used the number that had the least amount of sig figs, so I thought you had to go.
Not for adding and subtracting it,
Yeah,
did.
well, that's what it
Adding and subtracting, it should explain, I know it does, I've used this word. I mean, if you're confused, that's,
understand.
yeah, if you're confused, that's fine. That's what we're trying to figure out here. So if you're trying to use the worksheet, the top example says round it for the lowest number of sig figs, and the bottom example says round the lowest number of decimal places. But if I'm not here doing it with you, I can see why you're confused. So the rule is what I just said. If you're adding or subtracting, it's 1 decimal place if that's the lowest number, and that is. So there's 1 decimal place here and 2 here. If you're multiplying and dividing, it has nothing to do with decimal places, just the number of sig figs is how we do that. So I'm going to go over these with you now. I'm going to put the answers up here so you can check your answers. So I'll go ahead and move back to your individual desks or rows. Lights, please.
Stay here.
Sure.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay, let's see if this works. There we go. All right. So, hopefully, this makes some sense after I go over it. So I'll go over some of this slowly, and then the rest fast. And not sure why I wore long sleeves today. I am so hot right now, I can't even really explain. My sweat is sweating. I'm very uncomfortable. I think I smell okay, but you'll find out here in the front. So, here's how we do this side of this sheet. So, are you guys with me? I don't want to hold it up because then I have to reposition it. It's the one that says significant figures on top with the big box that explains the steps. Okay, so this side. You guys should have been good with this side, I think.
I have every single one wrong.
You said wrong or right?
Wrong. Wow. I'm just kidding.
Got a haircut.
I did.
Looks good.
Thanks.
So, there's the answers for this side. Again, I'm not going to really spend a lot of time here. You should remember decimal point present. We go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Decimal point absent. Start on the right. Can't start with zeros. That's why there's just 1 for that one, for example. Questions? On the bottom, you were just supposed to put a bar over the last significant digit, depending on how you count it. Right? So for this one here, it's the 8, because there's no decimal point. So 1, 2, 3. Decimal point, 1, 2, 3. So that's the last one there. Okay. Other side. you can read my chicken scratch. You'll be good here. So I'll go through a couple of these slowly. So if I multiply these two numbers together, so if I take 1.35 times 2.467, I get 3.33045. So I get 3.33045, right? So the rule is when you multiply and divide, you round it to the lowest number of significant figures. This number has 3, that number has 4, so 3 is the lowest. So 1, 2, 3, that's my answer. So I would keep that a 3 because that's a 0, right? Less than 5. So I'm not rounding up. Number 2 is a little bit confusing. If I take 1035 divided by 42, I get 24 and lots of decimal places. So I get 285, ... It's going to keep going, I don't care. So this number has 4 sig figs, this number has 2. So 2 is lower than 4. So to make this entire number have 2 sig figs, I round this 5 up, or 4 up to a 5, because that's a 6, so the answer is 25. Because that has 2 sig figs. It matches that one. So that's how we would do 1 and 2. Kind of just going slow there. Questions? Okay, 3 and 4. So if we're doing adding and subtracting. So again, if you were confused, I don't blame you. All right, I hadn't really taught it. The directions were confusing. But let's see if we can get it now. So 12.01 plus 35.2 plus 6. I get 53.21. 53.21 for number 3. That has 2 decimal places, that has 1, that has none. So I need a whole number answer, no decimal place. So 53.21 rounds, or doesn't really round, but stays at 53. So that would be number 3. Number 4, if we took 55.46 minus 28.9, I get 26.56. 26.56. So 26.6 is the actual answer because 2 decimal places, 1 decimal place. How do I make this 1 decimal place? Round this 5 up to a 6 because that's above 5, right? So 26.6. That's how I got the answer to 4. Questions? It's more important to be able to tell me this number has 2 sig figs, this number has 4, that number has 1. If you can do that, you're in a pretty good spot. But if you really want to make sure you get any Regents question right they throw at you, you need to be able to do multiplying and dividing. I've never seen, knock on wood, addition and subtraction problem where they ask you to round it with proper rules. Why do I teach it? Because it's part of learning about significant figures. Not everything you learn is on the Regents. You learn more than what's on the Regents. So that's why I teach it, but I've never seen it. I only see multiplication and division. So if you can remember rounding to the lowest number of sig figs for multiplying and dividing, then you should be fine. We don't do a whole lot of adding and subtracting in here. Not really. A little bit of subtracting. No questions. All right, I'm going to scroll it up here. There's the rest of them. So I think that was it here, 55.0017, 8.958. And again, like with number 8, no decimal places here, so no decimal places here. Number 9, we got 4 sig figs, we got 3, and we got 2. So this only has 2. 0.00, those zeros aren't counting because we can't start with a 0. And it's 17, 2 sig figs. Number 10, down here in the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this has 5 sig figs, this has 4. 4 is lower, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't need to pay attention to the powers of 10. What do you do with exponents when you divide. Powers of 10. What do you do with the exponents? So if you were to do 1.0 times 10 to the third divided by 1.2 times 10 to the second. You would divide these numbers, and then you would do what with those? Subtract. So the answer would be 10 to the first, right? Remember that. You subtract the exponents. I said I'd review that. Actually, I want to do a little more with it, but we don't have time today for that. But it's just quick, you know, reminding you how to do it. All right. So that's that worksheet. Let's go to the other one. All right. Let's just look at this top section here. Again, that's the most important skill. Can you look at a number and count the sig figs? That's the most important. Questions on those? Okay, next. Hopefully you can see those. So when you add or subtract, you round to the lowest number of decimal places. This has 3, so that has 3. This has 2, that has 2. That has 2, that has 2. This has 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place. So if you know, again, if you were confused, I get it. It's all right. But if you got it now, then we're good. If you don't have it now, you're gonna have to talk to me and let me know so I can help you. Can't read your mind. If you're getting most of them right, then you're okay.
I solved them and then I wrote down how many sig figs there were.
So you ignore the decimal place then.
Yeah.
Right. So like for example, Cody didn't do it right. That's okay. But as long as you're sitting here now, understanding what I'm saying, and you understand the decimal points, then you're fine. Not to worry about it. Any of these you want me to go over? Okay, moving on. These were a little bit easier because it's, I think, more along the lines of what we did before, on Monday. So this time you're multiplying, dividing, you round to the lowest number of significant figures. So this has 3, and that has 3, so that has to have 3. This has 2, that has 3, so that has to have 2. 2 is lower. 3, 2 here. So that's why those answers are what they are. Round them to the lowest number of significant figures. And again, that's really what you're going to be doing this year. Mostly that. You good? You can just leave it on that desk right, the table right behind Tristan here, that first lab table. Yeah, right there. Do you need to pass?
No.
Okay, thanks. Questions on this number 3 here? Want me to go through any of these? All right. Let's see. These were a little bit harder because you got to do, the order of operations type deal. So like for this one, you would subtract those first, then divide by that number. The math, it should be easy at this point. But with the sig figs, it gets a little confusing. I get that. All right, but the way I did it was, if I was to do, the multiplication here first before I added, then I would just keep all of the decimal places on the calculator and then add it, then round it to 2 decimal places. Because out of this number, when I multiply those two, there's like a ton of decimals, so 2 decimal places is lower. That's why the answer has 2. That is confusing, I understand. I wouldn't worry too much about this. This is just practice, not necessarily what you're going to see. And number 5, I should have had it crossed off, kind of like I crossed off the bottom here. I should have crossed off 5 because I think it's pointless. But I gave it to you, so there's the answers. Everybody got credit for doing the classwork, get homework credit. Those are the answers. I don't give busy work. I go over it, I explain it, or at least give you answers, right? So there's a purpose here. So those are the answers, but I was going to have to skip it, and I forgot to cross it off.
What's the last one?
Can't do it. I can't figure it out. Can anybody else figure it out? Can't round the number 900 to 2 decimal places and keep the same
I
number.
mean, like,
Then why is it on
so
there?
1,003.
Same thing. So in other words, if you measure length of something, it's 1,000 feet, and you're supposed to round that to 2 significant figures. The only way to do that is to get rid of all these numbers, which would totally change your measured value. So I don't know how to do that. I think that whoever made the worksheet made a mistake here. I don't think you can get those 2 significants. That's why. Okay, again, I wasn't too worried about it. So that's that. All right. So as warm-ups, tomorrow or Friday or next week, I will be practicing more sig figs with these. Right. So I'll throw just some sort of calculation up. Say, go ahead, do it. Round it to the proper number of sig figs to practice. Okay. So we're not done with that. We're gonna go use it all year. So that's that. All right. Okay. Someone asked me about the quiz. So you got a quiz tomorrow. What's it on?
Element.
All of the circled elements on that piece of paper. Okay? All of them. What are you laughing at, Cody?
Laughing at all the elements.
So let me point out to you which ones are in addition to what you've already taken. And I have not graded that yet. So
You
I
can totally do it Friday.
do what, Friday?
Quiz.
No, we're gonna do it tomorrow.
Um,
All right. Here's the addition. You know what? We're gonna do 2 clips here, so it's not.